Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are. I hope you are well. I hope you are healthy. And I truly hope that you enjoy the next 45 minutes that we will spend together. My name is Craig Taubman. I'm the founder of the Pico Union Project. And it is my great honor to welcome three guests. I'm fortunate that these guests are actually dear friends of mine. Some I do like more than others, but they are all my friends. They are faith leaders and community activists and artists in our community of Los Angeles, which is a small town on the West Coast. And I've had great fortune to work with them over the past several years. Aziza Hasan is the director of New Ground, a Muslim-Jewish cooperative that is an exemplary example of how we can work together as a community, loving our neighbors as we wish to be loved. Jason Chu is the Chief Storytelling Officer of the Pico Union Project. He's currently in seminary to become a pastor, and he's just an extraordinary man. And Brad Artson shares my birthday, April 3rd. Please, everybody take out a pen or your cell phone and identify it. April 3rd, we will both be turning another year old on that day. And dear friend, dear old friend, and he is the dean of the he's the dean of the rabbinic school at the American Jewish University. I believe it is a non-denominational seminary, and he will for sure clarify. So everyone, please take a deep breath and welcome these great people who are going to share a bit of their history and background with us. Ta-da!
It's magical.
All right.
Good to be here.
Welcome. By the way, Brad Artson's on the upper right, Jason Chu on the lower right, Aziza on the left lower. I'm going to just dive right in, okay, with an important question. Is there anything on this day, today, that you believe with perfect faith? Easy, right?
I'm happy to dive in, and thank you, Greg. I like you all the same, even if I'm not at the top of your list.
I didn't say that.
It's all good. I just want you to know that I have deep admiration and affection. It's been a really long journey of getting to and being willing to be more comfortable with myself. And so the one thing that I believe now more than I have at any other point in time is the importance of trusting the heart and trusting the willingness that when you reach out and you are vulnerable, it is hard and it is risky and it can lead to heartbreak, and it can break your heart open in a way that has incredible, like you won't even be able to know what's possible on the other side if you're just willing to sit with it. And so for me, it's the willingness to not just let my brain lead, but to allow the heart to be part of the conversation. And an important part that we are all whole as one, and that's where our power comes from as human beings. But it took me a long time to get there, because forever I was taught, at least, whether it's parents, educators, and everything else, is that you nurture this brain, and that's what you focus on. And you miss a really important connection when you forget about the heart.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah, you said believe with perfect faith, and so for me, I think that's a really interesting wording, because I've spent a lot of my life trying to figure out what faith is. Right? I know there's things I believe, but there's pieces of, I think, at least in my Christian tradition, that talks about, faith, and faith is something that we work out as we go along, So I think almost by definition, faith can't be perfect, because if it's perfect, then it's knowledge, right? And so I think for me, the things that I have faith in are that, you know, if we do what we think is right, what we think's been given to us to believe, then we'll have the opportunity to keep trying. Maybe that's what I really place my hope in, is that, you know, whatever we really believe is right, you do it, and maybe it was wrong, but then you'll be given an opportunity to correct and to course correct and to do better tomorrow. If we listen to each other, if we listen to God, if we listen to our hearts. So I think that's what I'm holding on to these days when it seems like a lot is wrong, that we can do better.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Well, I guess I want to just say that I love what Aziza and Jason both said, and I would tweak my addition in the following way. Judaism emphasizes emunah, which is not really faith, it's faithfulness. It's sticking with it. Even in the moments where you don't necessarily have 100% faith, but you have 100% emunah, you don't back down. I know that's very similar to the Arabic word and the concept in Islam as well. So I know two things. Here's my faithfulness. I'm faithful to this, that we have everything we need for the journey, that we are fully equipped to make the right choices, do the right things, come together and succeed. We can do that. We have everything we need. We just need to know that we have everything we need. And then the second thing that I would say is that we all have an intuitive awareness of what that next step optimally should be, what helps maximize us in relationship, in love, in experience, in justice. We all have that intuitively, but there are so many voices competing for our attention, telling us the ways that we're unworthy, we're wrong, we're outcasts, we aren't deserving. And so the challenge at this time of year and throughout the year, and what I think our faiths do when they work their best, is to remind us that no, you know what you know, you have what you have, and you need to hold on to that and act on it, even when the world is trying to make you small and accentuate your brokenness.
So Brad, Rabbi Artson, I guess I could call you Father Artson too, but that might confuse people.
There are two people who do, but only two.
Let's just do this as a quick one, okay?
Yeah.
Who was the first person that introduced you to religion?
To religion? I grew up pretty anti-religious. In college, I had two college roommates, both fundamentalist Christians, and they showed me a different way of being religious that launched me on this path.
Jason.
It's my parents. My parents are Christian. They're Christian in a different way than I am now. But I remember when I was very young, 3-4 years old, my mother would pray with me. She'd read scripture with me before bed. And that really set me on that path.
Aziza.
Whew, like, this is a long story. Everyone else was concise. I don't know how I'm going to do it. But
take your time.
It's my parents, my dad, Muslim, Palestinian, all those things interwoven together. My mom, Christian from the Midwest. Again, so many things woven. And they raised us Muslim, and I attended all the Christian services. So I had tension in my life constantly, all the way through college. And then finally in 2005, because my dad had passed away, and we went to Jerusalem to go see this place that he kept talking about during our bed night, like our nighttime stories. And I just remember not feeling religion at all. I was like, my uncles keep talking about how, Jerusalem's this holy space. And I was like, I don't feel you. And then I walked into the Dome of the Rock, and I put my hand on this stone, and I overcame just emotion like I hadn't felt. Like I was just weeping, and I didn't know where that came from. But after, with some time of unpacking, what I realized is I was actually not feeling. I was so numb to my anger towards different religious ideology that I had heard from different folks that said, you can't whatever, that, you know, it's okay to hurt somebody in the name of God. And I rejected it completely, because it was also rejection for me.
How old were you at this point?
So I was 25.
Oh.
And like, but like
Years
all
ago.
through like all this, like, yeah, totally, just a few years ago. But like it was like a journey of tension and finally owning my voice in the time unpacking that. And so I feel like it's so many different people that some of them I didn't even appreciate their voices.
Can I jump in? Aziza, I love first of all, I also have been to the Dome of the Rock, and anybody who doesn't feel wonder and awe inside that's the most beautiful building on the planet. It's just so full of spirit.
Mm.
You know, for me, the idea that I didn't grow up with religion has made it easier to embrace religion, because I didn't have any bad religion to clear out. I didn't have inappropriate guilt. I didn't have a sense of being judged or sinning, or like, I just had a sense of vast, deep, abiding love that was waiting to embrace. So that for me was always a source of strength.
Beautiful.
A question about always. The Pico Union Project is pre-COVID was home to 5 different faith communities: Muslim, 3 different Christian groups, an African American church, a Latino church, a Korean church, and a Jewish faith community. And you know, initially, I thought Jews were nuts, and very soon, early on, I realized that like people of faith are wacko. I mean, they're just different. My question is, you know, not everybody here immediately was born into their faith. They weren't. You guys weren't always Muslim, Christian, or Jewish. Do you think that had you been born to a different family, you would have adopted that faith unquestionably? Were you born into a tribe that had this compelling thing that pushed you along? Or is the calling for you, it was Judaism. It was Judaism all along. It was Islam. It was Christian, you know? Anybody care to respond to that? And if not, that's cool too.
You know, I don't been born into something else incredibly rich. Like I feel like a lot of different people talk about this, so I don't know where to attribute the source, but they talked about this concept of holy envy. And that, you know, my faith in my own tradition, my faith connected to something that is much greater than myself, really is nourished when I'm in the presence of other practicing faithful people from different traditions. And like, I grow when I'm in Hindu space, I grow when I'm in Jewish space, and like, it is fully nourishing. So, I mean, yes, I know what the right answer is according to a lot of my people that are in my same faith tradition, right? But like, and I love my faith tradition. I've chosen it, and I won't ever know the answer to that question. But I do know that I grow in the presence of people who are in line with connecting to a higher source and being there for each other, and integrity and love. And I see that in other traditions.
Beautiful. Anybody else care to interject?
I do, but I want to give Jason room too.
That's sweet of you. Yeah, I do have a thought, which is that, same. I mean, basically the same thing as Aziza, right? I do think, who's to tell, right? Who's to tell if my life were different, who I would become, and there is so much to draw from, I think, in each tradition. But I think that what is deeply valuable to me is being true to my journey, right? Like I was even saying in the first response, the life I've lived, the people I've been around, the family that I was born into, led me into the Christian tradition, the specifically Christian tradition, in a way that I've dived in, and it's a rich part of not only heritage, but personal experience. And I think that it's so interesting to be a Christian and participating in ecumenical work, participating in interfaith work, rather than trying, for me personally, to be a lot of everything, right? And this is something that I've heard and that I've seen on my journey as well, which is that it, to a certain degree, is more rewarding to those around you when you can come to the table fully yourself, right? And who am I to dictate what anybody's full expression of their self is? But when I can come to the table with my experiences, over decades of living out the Christian faith and wrestling with the specifically Christian faith, then that can help enrich other interfaith partners in a way that if I spend my whole life saying, maybe it's this and maybe it's that and maybe it's everything, and so I'm not going to dive into a particular experience, into a particular modality, that I think to a certain degree I would bring less to the table if I were to do that. I don't know if that makes sense, but that's how I'm living my life these days.
One thing that I've used repeatedly in this conversation is the word community, and Jason, for me, community is what it sounds like, co-munity. It's people in relationship, and the thing that builds the best community is trust, faith in the other. So I hope you will have faith in me, which you often do. I'm going to put you on the spot. Can you go to full screen? And while you're going to full screen, I want 45 seconds of your faith prose.
Yeah.
It could be something old or something brand new. You are on.
Okay. And say, thank God for every microphone and engineer, every late night it took to build a long career, and the job that moved my family to Delaware. Thank God for my family, my mom and dad. We got our battle scars, but they still got my back. My little sister, I'm proud that she's in therapy, teaching me to do the work to build a better me. Thanks to the exes who gave me a chance to love. Thanks to homeschooling, I never got hooked on drugs. Thanks to John, who taught me how to use Kung Fu. Thanks to 302, who taught me how to stay humble. And thanks to the fans and every single person who took the time to listen, even if you didn't purchase. I hope that it was worth it and it gave you a sense of purpose. If I helped you through the day, I was happy to be of service. And I'm grateful, though I might not always seem so. I neglect to mention because I hate to come off emo. That marriage, it was the hardest thing, but I was thankful every minute I wore that wedding ring. And now I sit here as the world spins. I sit here as the world spins. And God bless the day. God bless the day. I sit here as the world spins. Together we sit here as the world spins. And God bless the day. God bless the day. Amen.
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 Brad, you have 1 minute. The gates right now are open to eternal faithfulness.
Yeah.
And there are bountiful group of people outside the gates. What are you going to tell them?
I'm going to say that the gates are only in our imagination, that we human beings are constantly inventing gates and placing ourselves or others on the outside because of our weakness, because of our fear, because of the ways we think we need to protect ourselves by pushing away others. But there are no gates. We are all of us us. We are all of us inside. We are all of us cousins and friends and family for each other. And for me, the oneness, when we say in Judaism, Shema Yisrael, Hear, O Israel, God is one, that oneness is bigger than Judaism, bigger than any one of our faiths. We are all of us reaching beyond ourselves for a oneness that lays claim on each of us and that we all are part of.
Beautiful. Thanks. Aziza, I'm going to throw a question at you.
I would expect nothing less. Yes.
What?
Please go ahead.
Okay. And I'd like everybody to answer this question if possible. What do you feel is the biggest misconception in the world about Islam?
Biggest misconception. I think it's that Muslims really aren't approachable. It's that it's not that people are scared of building relationships with Muslims, and there's so much that we can all gain from being in relationship with different people. In Islam, it's a verse that's repeated in multiple verses, so it's an idea that exists in lots of spaces. And in one particular verse that I have in mind right now it's that God's will is diversity, and that had God wanted, God could have created all of us the same. And yet God's will was diversity. And so race against each other, doing acts of good. And so to me, it's this really important notion that we actually need to appreciate the differences within our faith community, within outside communities, be them people of faith, people of different persuasions, but that diversity is truly the will of God. And that sometimes not everyone, not every person embraces that verse the same way, but that it is an idea that is repeated throughout the Quran, and that the only way you're going to find out is if you're in a relationship with a Muslim, and that it's important to continue to build those relationships so that we can continue to grow within and to figure out where we can build together.
Aziza, along those lines, why don't you take 30 seconds and tell us what you do to build those relationships in your work?
Yeah, you got it. So in our work, the reason why New Ground was founded was because there was a lot of brokenness, a lot of great intention, where people were coming together, they wanted to come together, but where Muslims and Jews, be them different leaders, different faith community, individuals who had come to the table, been deeply disappointed, and you talked about trust was broken. And so we exist as a way to try to help repair, bring people back to the table, figure out how to keep them there. And the way we do it is through relationship, where we bring individuals who are willing to be in relationship with each other over the course of 10, 12 months, and really start to go into the hard stuff, ask some of the questions about the misconceptions of Jews, of Muslims, Islamophobia, anti-Semitism, how it hurts to hear certain things and why they hurt. And like this last weekend, we had a full 4 days dedicated to being able to talk about Israel-Palestine, because when we avoid the difficult conversations, we actually allow the relationships to break during hard times. And so we go right into it, and to be able to speak vulnerably and to continue to be willing to pull people in. And by the end of last night, which like the end of this retreat, it was a beautiful to witness how love can triumph and build up the human spirit, and that yes, the challenges were there and like really hard to face each other, but that when we do that, we actually build muscle and we connect with each other in much deeper ways.
Aziza, if you're comfortable, can I push a little bit further?
Always.
What was your position? What was the conversation about Palestine, Israel? And are you even allowed to, as the leader of this organization, to take a position publicly about that?
That's a really great question. I think it's important that my position is that we have to be able to have this conversation, and that we do it in really intentional ways. And that when we don't, we allow it to imagine a pressure cooker, right? If the pressure keeps on mounting and you don't find a release valve, it's going to blow, and it's going to make a huge mess way beyond. And so for me, it's the ability to be able to bring different ingredients, different people into the space, to be willing to be with each other under really tough pressure. And like to be able to have it. So like, for instance, I can't tell you exactly what the conversation and who said what, but I'll tell you that, we use these really big words. and to describe things. And we literally will go in one word after the next. So for example, there's Zionism, there's BDS, there's all these different words that hold a lot of meaning in different ways. And so we'll actually go into them, and you get to see on somebody's face who you love and you appreciate how when you use a word in a certain way or a different way from their understanding, how it deeply impacts them. And you get to work in and get into that. And it's messy and it's emotional and it's worth the journey, because it gives us a much deeper understanding and an ability to be able to talk about things without speaking in big ways, but instead going into the heart of another person that we appreciate.
Beautiful. Brad,
Yeah.
Rabbi Brad,
Yeah.
biggest misconception, instead about Judaism, I'm gonna change it ever so slightly. Biggest misconception about Jews.
Oh, I think the biggest misconception about Jews is we're all smart, we're all talented, we're all rich, we secretly run things. Well, that may be okay. But there's a kind of fantasy figure of the Jew that lurks just under the surface, if it's under the surface at all, and it's frankly bubbled up again. And the solution is exactly what Aziza lays out. It's we get to know each other as human beings, because one of the things Aziza and I remember we had lunch and we talked about, there are people who use Islam to perpetuate hate, but there are people who use Judaism or any human ideology to perpetuate hate. No one has a monopoly on jerks, right? And also, I know people who are saintly Muslims and their Islam got them there. And I know people whose Judaism or whose atheism or whose Christianity made them deeper, kinder, wiser people. So the challenge is these are all gifts given to us that we can choose to use to magnify our compassion and our decency and our humanity and our caring. And that's both the challenge and the opportunity. And I tell that to Jews as well, that the things we love, other people love in different flavors. And learning to appreciate those other flavors and the ways that humanity can be so rich and so diverse. And yet at the same time, everyone just wants to live a better life. Everyone wants to care for their loved ones. Everyone wants health and safety and security and dignity. And if we can find ways to do that, not despite our differences, but to love our differences, to see our differences as opportunities, that I think is the great opportunity.
Beautiful. Thank you. Hasan, Jason, please do tell us.
Yeah, I've been so I would say that the greatest misconception is that Christianity is based on anything other than God. And here's what I mean by that. What I mean by that is it's so easy for us to read ourselves into this religion. It's so easy for Christianity to become a justification for really this empty vessel for whatever our desires, whatever our ego-driven needs are. And it's as with every faith is, right? It's very adaptable to different contexts, to people coming from different social locations. But and I think that this is why you hear over and over again that Christians are hypocrites, because I feel like a lot of non-Christian folks, and this is true for me during the years when I didn't identify as religious, you look at Christians and you say they're just doing exactly what they would do anyways. They're pursuing the same things they would pursue anyways. And they're just calling that God, right? They're just calling that Christianity. And that's what kept me at an arm's length from religion for much of my youth. But then I was fortunate enough to find myself around Christian folks who really did seem to come to the religion, and instead of saying, how can I use this as a justification? You know, how can I use God to give myself a blank check to say, oh, I want to see myself as righteous. Okay, great. Christianity lets me do that. I want to see the people I don't like as unrighteous. Christianity gives me a reason to do that. And I finally met people who said, not what do I want religion to be, but actually, might there seriously be a God out there who loves me and who loves everyone around me and wants me to live in a way of love? And unfortunately, I see so often, sure, all religions can tend in this direction, but specifically my religion, you look at what it's done to the world, and so often it's just been people, and by people I often mean men, and by men I mean power, right? Just exerting our will on the world around us. And if there was one thing I could say is emphatically not Christianity, the Christianity that I know, it's emphatically not just an excuse to transform the world into our image.
So, question.
Jay, can I jump in, Craig, and ask a question to the group? Because it seems to me that what links what Aziza and Jason and I have been talking about is that each of our faiths, and frankly all cultures, have the choice of whether they want to model themselves on the model of empire or whether they want to model themselves on a model of heart. And certainly, you know, when I read the Quran, you can read it as empire building, and you can read it as Allah's vast love and always willing to take us back. You read the stories of Jesus, and you can read Jesus as the guy who overturns other people's tables, or you can read Jesus as the guy who loves the sinners and wants to be with the outcast. Same with Moses. You know, all of our traditions have a weakness, a temptation to give in to empire, and all of us are called to do something better. So my question to Aziza and Jason and to you, Craig, is how do we resist the urge to empire? How do we have the courage to stand in a place of risky love?
Brad, this is your question. Remember, everybody's gonna, so this is your big question.
That's my big question.
You don't wanna, like, you know, this is it.
I'm throwing in my chips right here.
Okay, all right. So who'd like to answer that? A great question.
Ooh, it's an amazing question, and I think it's one that we need to be wrestling with pretty regularly and being committed to talking about this in our communities. Because I think it's sometimes when we tease out our tensions that's when we can start to own things. Because this is a really big risk, right? You're talking about empire, which is more powerful and absolute. And then you're talking about the heart, which is like, you don't know where it's going to take you. And it makes you vulnerable. And sometimes I see people like act the strongest. I know that that's a sure sign that they're protecting something that makes them deeply vulnerable. And so it's actually the heart that's going to soften them, not strength. So it's this interesting oxymoron. But for me, and I think it's this, so like if there's one thing that COVID-19 has taught me, it's that I don't have any control over my life. Everything can change in a moment. And like, you know, I'm a mom of 2 elementary age kids. And if I try to exert control when they're in their classroom on Zoom, I am going to lose, and I'm going to lose bad. But when I am able to actually lean in and really like have a willingness to let go a little bit and to be a little bit softer, like that's when I see a way more desirable outcome, when I've stopped controlling. And so I think it's being willing to infuse your question into our daily rituals of just reflection and practice, and that it's wrestling with the different verses that, like, you're right, like you could read it one way or the other or another way, right? But it's actually giving space to be able to talk about it, like in a conversation like this, that really matters.
Yeah,
We're tight on time. A sacred thing for me is, you know, less is more, and let's get to a great question. Aziza, why don't you throw out a question, and then Jason or I can choose to answer the rabbi's question or your question.
Wow, you know how to spice things up. I think my question is, how do we infuse, like I read the compassion, I read about repair in our different traditions, and I wonder, like right now I see myself, like when I'm willing to lean into repair, things start to shift, and it's so hard to do that because then I also have to say that I did something wrong, and admitting that can sometimes be really hard, especially if I'm a leader, right? And so how do you think we can really actually start to repair people, relationships, things that we are contributing to? Like Jason, you even brought up, like women, and so that's also part of self-awareness and religion. And I know that's a pretty big question, but like, what do you think we can do better to lean into repair?
You've got 1 minute, Jason.
It's on me now. So actually, and this goes into both of your questions, which I love that we're kind of asking the same questions. The word that's been going through my mind is humility, right? And I think that that's what's often so ironically lacking, is that we all have these faiths that tell us God is so much bigger than us, and the universe is so much more vast than us, and yet they become machines for ego and arrogance. And the corrective, whether that's a corrective towards healing, whether that's, in whatever direction we need to move with love rather than empire, I think that it starts with humility, and it starts with realizing that we have, that we're not God, right? Which means that we can make mistakes, which means that when we own up to our mistakes, that's actually natural, that's human, right? And yet I think that that's something that I observe myself moving with not enough. But I think the finest moments that I've had and the most restorative connecting moments are when I've learned to move with humility. And even, in conversations like this, coming in not presuming I have so much to give, but that I have so much to learn.
So we're going to complicate this a little bit, Jason. You have the choice of, well, you don't have the choice. You can throw out a question now.
I can't.
The rabbi or Aziza have a choice to answer the question.
Yeah, I think, so for me, I'm almost looking at the inverse of your questions. I think it sounds like we've all had journeys of faith. And what was it in your journey that kept you away from religion, or when you're at your most skeptical, your least excited to jump in? What was it that kept you from identifying or from being religious?
I would love, Rabbi Artson, you are dean of a rabbinical school. Yeah. Your job is to take these saplings, and some older saplings and some younger saplings.
Yeah.
You must have myriad stories. Yeah. Your faith has been tested with these individuals. And so can you answer that?
Yeah, I got a short answer for you, Jason. Nothing makes religion uglier than religious people. Right? The certainty, the smugness, the judgment, the use of religion as a cudgel to beat others over the head and never examine yourself. Really, you open the paper, and the thing that makes religion most ugly is something some religious spokesman said or did. It's never what the atheists say that makes religion ugly. They make atheism look bad. So, so for me, what faith in God does is lift me above the voices of religious authorities. And to remember that we are all, as Aziza said, we're creatures. We were born against our will. We will die against our will. We will be judged against our will. All we have to choose is how we take the journey. And if I can do that, if I can hold God up as above and beyond, then I can rise above the pettiness with which religious people present religion, the harshness, the viciousness, the oppression of women, the oppression of people of colors, the ways religion gets used to prop up the things that are sucking the life out of the world. And I can remember it's bigger than that. It's a covenant.
Can you repeat that? We are born against our will. We die against our will. And you said a third thing?
I did, because this comes from the Mishnah, Craig, as I know you know, and so you're throwing me a softball. Against your will you are born, and against your will you shall die, and against your will you will raise in judgment. This is something that I assume the three of us can endorse. Although it's not my message, it's you know whose. And the notion that we are creatures, so that we have a limited say for a limited time, and mostly things happen to us, and we get to decide how to respond and where we stand.
I see we are creatures of habit a lot, and especially people in faith communities, there's a lot of habit, there's a lot of ritual, a lot of tradition. For me to answer the question that all three of you have posed, to love your neighbors yourself is a wonderful philosophy, mission, approach to life. But all too often, as George, our caretaker, says, we hear it in church, we hear it in the mosque, we hear it in the synagogue every week, and then we leave it on the pew and we don't take it outside. To love your neighbor is more than just a bunch of words. To love your neighbor means you have to know your neighbor, to mix things up so that you cannot be smug, so that you are not laissez-faire, so you are not complacent. The best way for me is to put yourself in environments that are different. Environments with people who don't necessarily look like you, think like you, feel like you, but they breathe like you. Their heart pumps blood like your heart. And this has been just a beautiful, gorgeous opportunity for our community. I want to do a lightning round. You have one-word answers. We're going to start with Aziza, and we're just going to go around one word. What's your favorite holiday besides Passover?
Oh, okay. It's actually Simchat Torah. Simchat Torah. Simchat Torah. Because you get to run and dance, and well, this is what I experienced at Ikar. Run and dance and just fully embrace community, love, and compassion.
I was so sure you were going to say Shmini Atzeret. You know. Jason, first, greatest Jewish holiday. Your favorite holiday?
It's very stereotypical. I gotta say Christmas. I love going home. I love being with family. It's in the winter. It's cold outside. You're warm inside.
Brad Artson.
Love it.
Shabbat, for sure. Having a day once a week to remember creation, remember the Exodus, to remember who we are, and to rest with the people we love.
What food brings you back to your family and or community? One food that is your people's food. Aziza.
Makluba, which literally in Arabic means upside down. It's a dish with rice and chicken and cauliflower, sometimes potatoes and eggplant, and you flip it upside down into this beautiful mountain that is just divine.
Rabbi Artson.
We don't have any of our own food. We either eat Slavic food or Arab food, all of which is delicious. But the one thing we invented and gave the world is charoset. And there's a Sephardic recipe of dates and orange rinds and brandy and pine nuts that we eat at Passover. And I make a huge amount and eat it all week. And that is awesome. It's the one Jewish culinary contribution.
Rabbi Chu.
I would say dumplings, right? So in Asian American Christian communities, usually after service, everyone eats together, and it's curry or it's a rice dish or something. But my favorite was always dumplings. It's very communal, and it's shared across Asian American communities too.
Beautiful. I'm going to throw it back to you guys for the last round. and try to keep it to 10 seconds. What one takeaway from this conversation is sitting with you right now that somebody else said? If you can identify that person and what they said, that would be great. And before you do that, I'll give you a second to think about it. I want to thank my sister, Karen Glasser, for facilitating this. Karen, why don't you bring yourself on the screen and we can say, I don't even know if you can do that. Do you have the ability to do that? We're about to find out. No.
I can't do that.
You could have just said that 10 seconds ago. I can't do that, but that's my sister, Karen Glasser, who's been doing these. Thank you for joining us, and we're gonna end with this. So who would like to go first? Your takeaway, your one sentence takeaway.
Aziza, it's all about relationship and about really knowing each other.
Thank you, Brad. I would go to you. Yeah, it was actually your generosity when you said that, like, in your words, I can't remember, but like, none of us have a monopoly on our jerks. And yeah, I'm holding that. Thank you.
Yeah, for me, Rabbi Artson, just the way you've engaged so thoughtfully and so caringly. It's not any one thing you said, but the way you ask questions, really from the heart, really touched me, and it really made me miss doing things like this in person.
Thank you. Me too. And thanks to Craig for making the Pico Union and the light that it shines in the world.
Absolutely. Thanks for making this conversation possible, Craig. It's really, we need more of it.
Yes. Yivarechecha Adonai v'yishmerecha. May all of us be blessed and guarded safely on this journey. Ya'er Adonai panav elecha. May the Holy One, may the Creator, the one who brought us here, look upon us with grace and compassion. Yisa Adonai panav elecha. Look at us and bless our journey in peace, keeping us whole, keeping us healthy, giving us the opportunity to see a new, brighter tomorrow. Thank you so very much.
Thank you.